National Gallery of Modern Art Bengaluru, Ministry of Culture, Government of India invites you for the screening of The Open Frame, a documentary film on Vasudev's art and life, followed by a discussion among the makers of the film. Organized as the outreach program of the ongoing exhibition in a residence, A Return to Sama. The Open Frame is a 55 minutes documentary film that tracks the artistic and personal journey of S.G. Vasudev. Directed by Chetan Shah, the film is structured around Vasudev's creation of a painting from start to finish. This cinematic portrait of one of India's leading senior artists is a visually rich celebration of color and texture. Thanks to the painterly cinematographer of Navroz Contractor, the research and interviews conducted by Lata Mani add to the significance of the film as a record of significant developments and debates in the world of Indian art. Music is an important part of the film, as it is of Vasudev's work, with an original score composed by Prasanna, interspersed with carefully selected tracks of classical music. Kindly switch off your mobiles or put your mobiles in silent mode. Thank you.
When I see a blank canvas, I see so many things, so many forms, Of course, only when I start painting, then the forms get crystallized. Some of them they go off, some of them they stay on. But then I think of the entire canvas. I don't think of one particular space. When you see a blank canvas, I always feel that the canvas has to be layered, textured. It's a process, and I cannot paint on a even professional canvas straight away, because my technique demands certain building up layers of pigments. So I use white pigments, 2-3 layers I give, and then afterwards I work with the textures, with acrylic paints, and I build up textures. And while I'm building up textures, it's almost like painting white on white. Already the painting looks ready. I mean, it could be framed and sent for a show. But then what I do is I keep it in the studio for a little time. Then when it's completely dry, it becomes completely hard, and then I start using colors. So it's almost like you have painted twice on the same canvas. This house cum studio was built 12 years ago, and one needed a place also in the city, and also the architect was very particular about the light, particularly north, south light, and so he planned this studio to get light throughout the day. You can just move my easel anywhere because these 4 huge windows throws beautiful light. Even the walls are kept grey without painting. It has got a lot of lovely empty spaces. It's much more cozy a place. The advantage of my staying here in the same house is that I can just walk up to the studio in 2 minutes and I can start my work.
Vasu?
Yeah.
Marie on the phone for you. Marie.
I got it. I don't know whether you call it memories because I'm at home. I don't feel that I've gone out of this place. 22 years of staying has made a lot of difference, and that sort of a thing doesn't go from one's mind. Bangalore, I have 2 places I work, my farmhouse as well as my city studio, and sometimes I come here and straight away go to the canvas. I have no problem, and again go back to Bangalore and start painting, because I consider that all these 3 spaces are connected, interconnected. Things have changed a lot here since the last 15 years, but fortunately the place where I live in Cholamandal, that place is still very nice and calm and spacious, and the same trees which have spoken to me years, they still speak to me. Being the only son between my 2 sisters, my parents thought that I would become either an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor, if not anything else, as an agriculturist. My father was agriculturist. But my marks, I was always 45-50% chap. So it was impossible. After the intermediate, I thought perhaps I could go to art. But then, my parents were told that let him do BSc, physics, chemistry, mathematics. And I used to get a tuition for all the subjects, and that was a torture. Then I started doing caricatures of these cricketers and then musicians whom I admired. I was doing all these things without my parents' knowledge. My cartoon and caricature for all these magazines was only after 10:30, 11 o'clock in the night. Then there was one art critic called G. Venkatachalam, and it is he who saw my work. Then he said, I think you should go to an art school. And there is KCS Panikar, is a very wonderful teacher, and Madras is very close by, you must go to an art school. I said, Sir, how do I convince my parents? He said, I will talk to them. So my parents finally agreed because they knew I was not happy at all. Then I went to Madras Art School in 1960. I was 18 and odd at that time. Then I gave Panikkar this letter, Venkatachalam's letter. He said, good, but I won't take you in unless you pass the test. I said, yes, sir. Test was something like drawing from the model, which I had never done. Somehow I managed, I managed that, and I managed to going and doing landscape outside, and I got a first rank, and then I was admitted to the college. But one thing my father felt, how are you going to make money from art? So initially my father said, look, I will give you some money every month for your basic necessities. But that was not sufficient. Really is not sufficient, because I had to buy my colors, my canvas, my paper. It's all expensive. But in 1964, I applied for the National Scholarship, Government of India Culture Department Scholarship. And I got that scholarship that year, which was 250 rupees a month at that time. That was really a good sum. And so I told my father, please don't send any money anymore. I can manage. And I didn't touch my father's pie after that. And 1967, I got the national award for my painting of Lalit Kala Academy. And so that really made my mother feel great. She's that, that something, her son has achieved. I mean, that feeling, I could see that sort of a happiness in them. And so no going back after that.
Establishment of Cholamandal started because they requires an identity for the group of artists.
Not only did they paint, there was a whole sense of community there, because they were planning Cholamandal.
Madras at that time, if you said you are an artist, people will ask, and then, which means what do you do to survive?
There was the old romantic idea of having an isolated place for dreaming in art, and that also Cholamandal, the locale of Cholamandal also suited that.
Cholamandal has always been a sort of, it's often been called a laboratory for artistic impulses and experiments.
When we started Cholamandal, it's like people coming and seeing, it's almost like a zoo, for people coming and seeing artists.
We were all talking about artists colony or artists campus and things like that, but we never managed it. So that was absolutely fantastic that he managed to bring them all together, and it actually happened.
1965, in the College of Art, when we were studying, and Panikkar asked some of us what we would do after finishing the diploma. We didn't know what to answer, how to answer that question. Then he said, look, some of my very good students, they have gone to commercial industry and they have lost themselves. And I feel very bad about it. I know how difficult it is for an artist to survive.
Panikkar felt the need that unless there is a place and an alternative source of income which would keep the hearth burning and also allow the creative expression to flourish, that he thought of this kind of a place, where they can work freely and earn through craft.
There was an American artist who had come to visit our college, and he was wearing a shirt which was designed by him. The first time we saw an artist design his own shirt, that's how we started doing batik. We were about 25, 30 of us We started learning batik and did the batik, and in 1 year we had produced enough, like saris, dress materials and wall hangings and so many things. We had an exhibition and it was a sellout in Chennai. That gave us the idea that we need a place, and it's possible for us to, even if one spent about an hour or two a day, we could make enough money for our basic livelihood. So we formed a cooperative, Artists Handicrafts Association we called it, and bought 10 acres of land in different stages and named it Cholamandal Artist Village. When we started Cholamandal in 1964-65, most of us were, in our early 20s or mid 20s. That's a fantastic age, and an energy level is very high. That youth experiment things, not only in your art but even otherwise in life, So we were doing those things, and bang sessions or going to the beach and playing volleyball every day evening. We also tried to be together. It is not only for art we were here or to make living we were here, but we also wanted to share our joys and of life.
To actually be with people who discussed painting, who discussed color, who discussed texture, and to see a canvas and to see something take shape. This was a completely new experience, a new dimension to my life. And the advantage with being with VASUDEV at that time is that he was surrounded by the whole young Madras crowd.
Vasu had a tremendous need to connect to filmmakers, to writers, to poets, to photographers, to media people, to art lovers. I mean, he didn't have a hierarchy in that. He just saw that as one contiguous field.
It was not simply art, because there used to be dances happening here, there used to be dramas which used to be staged here in that open air theatre, and it brought a whole lot of, creative minded people together.
Bala Saraswati dancing there with the lights went off, and she said, don't worry, ask somebody to switch on those headlights of those cars parked right round. And she danced by that.
That's, Chetan Shah, one of our friends from Chennai, who knew me for
for some years. And I came one day home and said, I would like to make a film on you. And then I said, yes. Then he said, how should I go about? I said, don't ask me. I can paint in the, for you. Then not. Then he went to Lata Mani, and I think Lata should be able to explain this better.
It was a really interesting process for me. I knew Vasu as a friend. I knew Vasu as a friend. I had some idea of the arc of his work, but it gave me an opportunity to really sit and look at the material that was available. One limitation was that there isn't enough actual secondary analytical material on the work done in South India. We don't have the equivalent of a Geeta Kapoor for the South Indian artists, for example. So if you wanted to write something on the Baroda school, there's more material again. So one had to go on the basis of catalogs, newspaper reviews, and then fundamentally I would say the spinal column of the film was my conversations. Conversations with Vasu, but also conversations with the other artists that are there in the film, some of whom are from the Baroda school, some of whom are from Cholamandal, some of whom are artists who were associated with Vasu in various capacities. Girish was working for OUP at the time when that was happening. And then, of course, Vasu has been very involved in Kannada literature, book design, samskara, various things that have been happening in Karnataka. So it was a process of discovery. If Vasu says, I see a blank canvas and I wonder, and slowly forms start to emerge, for me it was a similar process with the research. I thought I knew something, but then the picture became more and more layered. And it definitely convinced me that there are many PhDs still waiting to be written about the Southern artists. I think they are highly understudied, and I hope that that problem will be rectified in the period to come. So what we had was archival footage, like of them playing basketball, photographs, eating in Cholamandal. But there wasn't any previous film that one could draw on and build on. So we built on conversations, and Vasu was a great storyteller. So it was actually a very, very enjoyable process for me. I enjoyed it greatly.
Besides Chetan and I are very close friends for 30 years now. He lives in Chennai, and Vasu and I met first in the late 60s when I was studying in Baroda University as a painter. So when Chetan approached me to be the cinematographer of this film, then I had two ideas which are in the film, and which I'm very glad that we went along with it because it really works. Is that the film should start with a blank canvas, and he should paint the entire canvas, and then we will intercut all these talks and people and his life and everything like that till the canvas finishes. And actually it is never finished. So he brings another canvas before the film finishes. So we went about it like that, and the form of the film was formed with this concept in mind, with this idea in mind. And I'm sorry that, video production, video projection also is different from place to place and projector to projector and all. But if you notice in the film, I have not used any colors that are not in his paintings, in my photography. So that is all on purpose it is done. And if something has come in the middle, then we have the power to control the color in the post-production. So we go about doing that. The cinematographer's job is right in the beginning when you shoot the film, and then you take a holiday for 2 years till it's finished, and then you come back to it when it is ready and cut. But you have to put everything together and see that you make a final print. So at that point we color correct and we put whatever the thing that you finally get to see over here. And for me also it was a very interesting process because everybody in the film who talks are also my friends, and I've known them, and some of them were my teachers. So it was good fun visiting them, and of course being around Vasu and Lata and Chetan, and it was very enjoyable. Let me tell you one other thing, that the paintings were not photographed by me. The paintings were photographed by Malik Katakol. He's a very well-known photographer, and he took all the paintings in very high resolution, and then the movement was done on the computer. Sorry, one more contribution of mine in the film is that when the idea of who will do the music came, it was my suggestion that we have to ask Prasanna to do it. Prasanna is a very good friend of mine, and one of the reasons Prasanna's name came to me is because he is a Western jazz guitar player, plus he has studied half of his life in Chennai, in a Guru Chennai village. So whatever that you heard, both which sounded like Veena, and both are played by him.
How much time did it take for you to make this film?
About 1.5 years. That is the minimum time that a good documentary takes, that much to make. In fact, we were lucky that the funds were in place, otherwise it would take at least 2 years to finish a film from start to finish. At least, yeah. So if you, for example, if you are commissioned to make a film for National Geographic in 2018, your screening will be 2021.
I think, can I just say one more thing? The other reason why I felt that Prasanna was a great suggestion is that you see that Vasu is a very interdisciplinary artist, right? Number of different mediums, and there's a certain freedom in the way he uses form and color and so on. And so, and he's also music is a huge part of how he thinks, I feel. This is my view. There are artists. It's almost as though if you look at any one of the periods, like the fantasy, rhapsody, theatre of life, or whatever, the evolution within each of those periods of his painting, it is slow. Rather like a raga is developed very, very gradually, and you have to pay attention to be able to hear the note within the note and to be able to hear the evolution, right? Similarly in his painting, you will not see dramatic differences, and that's because of that attention to detail and attention to texture. So music, but also a kind of an openness to different kinds of music, which is also something that, as a listener, is true of us. So in all those ways, I felt like Prasanna was a great suggestion.
I think that you're very right, because we've seen this film so many times and not spoken about this. So we are all three quite connected with the music, and we also know what Vasu hears when he's all by himself. So all the recorded music that you heard is constantly playing in his house when he's working or when there are guests.
Everything came together very well. The film, the music, photography. It just came out very well. What was the intent? When you started what was the intent? What was the driving force? Was it to promote Vasu? Was it to promote Cholamandal? Was it to promote South Indian film?
Well, I'll tell you something. This is not an advertising film that we went around, or a propaganda film that we went around.
Nobody knows about it. Yeah, nobody knows about it.
Yeah. So the whole point is that when you start making a film, actually you want to talk about or discuss about a man's work. And some people, it is not that everybody has liked the film. Many people have not liked the film. It is not that, everybody thinks that what Vasu has done is terrific, because so it is up to everyone to make up your mind. So when we actually start making a film because I think from the three of us, I am the filmmaker, and Lata has also now made 3 films, so she also can tell you that it is some story that you want to tell, and it is so intense in yourself that you want to tell it, and that you hope that somebody will receive it well, and that most people will receive it well.
I think for me, it's definitely not a branding film. Absolutely not. And but what for me the exciting part of was how to think the life, the man, and the times, and how to tell that story. Quite often, you go to an art gallery, you see a painting, you have absolutely no idea of the life behind it, unless it's a very, very famous painter. And then they're spoken of in relation to their the group of artists that they belong to. Now again, here we had if there was more secondary material, there could have been other layers to the film. Looking at, what does the Madras Art School represent in relation to Baroda, in relation to Shantiniketan. There just was not the kind of material that was there, but there was a very compelling story to be told about a group of artists in the immediate period after independence who undertook this experiment of trying to find a language which would bring together existing traditions of the subcontinent but make them contemporaneous, to borrow a word from K.G. Subramaniam. How did they respond to their times? How did they make it possible? Because we don't have the equivalent. Prior to this, our art was patronized by rajas and, people like that. These were folks who were inventing themselves in a newly independent India. How did they go about doing that? So those were the kind of threads that created a tapestry for this story.
Okay, thank you very much everybody for